somewhere new. And I try to crack this iceberg open till it shatters through the ocean. I wanna make shockwaves. I wanna make shockwaves with you. Gonna move the ocean current till the waves flood what's been burning. I wanna make shockwaves. I wanna make shockwaves with you. And I know I'm only getting higher till it feels like I can walk through fire. And I know I'm only getting higher till it feels like I can walk through fire. Trying to step back and see the view from above, 'cause I know that nothing lasts forever. And when we open our eyes, my worries fade away, 'cause you gave me your heart in the light of day, in the light of day. Sweet delight, you are my lucky charm. I hold you close in the night in my arms. And when we open our eyes, my worries fade away, 'cause you gave me your heart in the light of day. Welcome to unrealization. We came prepared to kill the operation. It ain't fair, but I feel like we're the nation. To raise the flag and do the preparation. Welcome to reality, there's no way back. Welcome to reality. Can't fuck with that.
There's a distance between us. It's getting hard to reach out. Haven't seen you in seasons, but all I hear is your voice. I know my limits. You can break me down, but I'll stay till the finish line. And I've been quite some time now, just to see you again. And I've been counting days to get away, to see you again, see you again. Been finding ways to get away, to see you again, see you again.
She looks deep into my eyes, her mind silent. The problems in her head pile up. Again and again she tells me how sick she is. Everything is so hard for her. Why don't you just tell me? Everything can be so simple, but you want to make it difficult for yourself, for yourself, for yourself, for yourself, for yourself. Why don't you just tell me? Everything can be so simple, but you want to make it difficult for yourself, for yourself, for yourself, for yourself, for yourself. I will take your heart, count the time of love until it is over. You should have thought about your problems wouldn't go away by themselves.
Now I wanna burn all the bridges between us. I can't focus, I can't forget. I've been thinking too much lately. I just need to clear my head.
Alrighty then. So today I'm really only doing this to test if this new chat system I'm using works, which it does, but it doesn't do what I want it to do. So I'm trying to integrate TikTok chat again, um, but for some reason, despite the fact this is supposed to work, I'm using the Social Stream Ninja chat right overlay. But for some reason, TikTok doesn't want to work. So it's whatever. I went over Simon's Substack last night and had a look at his whole process for streaming, multi-streaming, and so forth. And I tell you what, you may as well go out and buy yourself something with a um, that comes with Linux because me, despite the fact that I did my darndest, I spent like 3 hours trying to get it all working um, through having to have a additional element that includes compatibility with Linux. So, yeah, no, it wasn't having it with me, so I couldn't quite. At least I'm not right now prepared to go the full length and do my best to try and fully integrate that. But for now, I wanted to at least try it and see if I can do more with this chat to get at least it looking better, more messages on screen at once, and so forth. But I'm unable to really get any other chats I didn't already have available. So right now all we've got is X YouTube and Twitch, I believe, as far as chats are concerned. I keep trying to stream to Rumble, but it's being a dickhead. It doesn't like Streamlabs. So it probably is a way to do it, but I don't care enough about Rumble to be completely honest with you, to worry about it right now. But if you are in the chat, please let me know so I can just see that everything's working well. You should be able to at least see yourself on screen for a little while longer now than you were, let's say, 2 days ago. I'll also quickly tilt my camera down a little bit, which is something that I can do. How lovely. There we go. Tilt that all the way down. Zoom out we'll zoom in a smidge actually. May as well. Apply that. Now my head's really high. That's fine. That's completely fine. So yeah, I've also had to if you didn't see, I did launch a website a couple of days ago. I've just been having a couple issues with it. And yeah, whatever it is, the process of me getting to a point where I had a domain name and website and so forth, a little bit more complicated than I'd like it to be. And so the changes I needed to make are just a little bit above my level of intelligence when it comes to this stuff. So at the moment, I've just got it locked behind a password wall, and I've switched to a new link.bio/Eric McRae, where you can find everything that I wanted to put on there anyway. It's actually a pretty good little service, a little bit like Linktree. So I have all my links there. It also have embedded videos. And I'll probably also have I can have like 3 or I don't know more pages as well. That'll allow me to even have the polling updates there and so forth. So there we go. Simon knows how to test. Hopefully that shows up on the chat any second now. I predict it will because X has been working up until this point. And I did get a notification. What I do have is, with what I'm using to make this chat work, I get a notification every single time there's a new message, so I always know when there is something new. But whatever the delay is on this for updating, I'm not entirely sure. There we go. Simon Anderson test has come through. Absolutely lovely, doubly. But yes, Simon is just far too good with computers for my liking. So trying to follow in the footsteps of the services and programs he uses is a little bit more. Yeah, Simon, that's what I mean. The restreamer component, and that was just a complete shambles trying to implement that with what I've currently got. I spent about 2 hours just trying to. I had like 100 different tabs open. It was a shambles. Maybe that's just me because I'm useless. Rumble doesn't like variable bit rates. Yeah, I don't know. I just Rumble. Rumble's okay for videos. I find I can't be asked with live streaming. I think X is good enough for live streaming, to be completely honest with you. Plus the amount of people that just pop up on your screen when you're on X, or that end up, they carry the viewership for sure. Although for me, typically YouTube carries my commentary, so or the comment section, so that's always nice. But yeah, I mean, I've still got it on TikTok at the moment as well. Though I think for TikTok in the future, I might just switch to doing, TikTok only live streams, because they are it's a little bit of a different market. You'll set up Restreamer for me, okay? No worries. It's a little bit of a different. I don't know. It's a little bit more. You have to be a bit more particular about how you do things with TikTok, and so they often just shadow ban you in the middle of a stream because for some reason they'll look at something like this on the screen right now and call it reproducing work or something. Not entirely sure, or not authentic, or not original. So you kind of have to get around that by just being on it yourself. And so yeah, TikTok's its own other ball game, and you have to be a bit more careful. But in the meantime, what I am using works like a charm, with the exception of the TikTok integration. So can't really complain there. But yeah, so I got another chat. Oh, I wonder who's commented this time. Shadowband says chat's working. That's very good to see. But yes, so I thought we'd just do a kind of a shorter little, I don't know. I want to call it a politics session. Politics and chill, I suppose, because that's always the topic of conversation with me anyway. But it's not necessarily anything particularly in-depth or interesting. But so I've got old former Dunedin mayor up on the screen here. This absolute plonker, Aaron Hawkins, is it? And he decided, of course, that it'd be a great idea to go into a supermarket whilst carrying a particular flag. So, former Dunedin Mayor Aaron Hawkins says he was barred from shopping at a Centre City supermarket at the weekend because he was carrying a rolled-up flag of Palestine. However, the supermarket had a different version of events. On Saturday afternoon, Mr. Hawkins posted a photo to social media of himself with the flag unfurled outside New World City, Centre City. He said along with his 8-year-old son he was considered an intimidation risk by staff there. I want to be clear, I have no time for activism that targets, harasses or intimidates service workers. That's not my style. Such an edgy Antifa wannabe, I know, right? He joins out with the edgy Antifas, the ones that like to intimidate people for not having the same views as them, and then says, oh, it's not my style to intimidate people. It's like, well, if you carry the flag that's most commonly associated with terrorism, or is more commonly associated with terrorism than, regular people, then you're not going to have much luck getting sympathy from average day Kiwis, are you? Especially the way that they, carry on in whatever CBD they happen to be in. That's not my style, but if that has happened, those instances can be dealt with as and when they arise. This level of blanket censorship, including of families just shopping for dinner, feels like a disproportionate response. Yesterday, a foodstuff spokesman said the former mayor was not barred entry. Instead, he walked off after staff asked him to leave his flag at customer services while he shopped. He said the former mayor would be welcome back and had not been barred from the store. The store asked that shoppers leave flags outside or at customer services while in the store. Following a rally in the nearby Octagon, a person was entering the store carrying a flag. One of our team members kindly requested that they leave the flag at customer services, and the individual chose to leave instead. It's important to note that they were not barred from entering, and that they are welcome to return. Yeah, trust some, crazy lefty to just make up absolute lies about what's happened to try and play the victim and act like he's just been dealt with unfairly, and state that he's been barred when he's never been barred at all. I mean, it's just typical, absolutely typical. Exactly, it's the flag of Jordan with a little addition, little addition. But they never ever tell Jordan off for stealing more land than Israel did, if you want to call it theft, of course. They'll march down the streets and they'll say, Israel stole all of Palestine's land. It's like, what about the rest of the British mandate? Or what about the rest of the, what are we calling it? Um, the Transjordan. Like, who took the rest of that? Certainly wasn't Israel, was it? It's like, come on, be consistent. Um, so yeah, there's always that. Um, Mr. Hawkins' post garnered quite a lot of attention. Among those expressing displeasure with the store was Dunedin City Councillor Steve Walker, who said on Facebook he had now added the supermarket to his boycott list. Oh, cute. A number of others expressed their disappointment in the supermarket. That's absolutely disgusting behaviour, one commentator wrote. Mr. Hawkins yesterday said the reaction he received as he entered the store was clearly because of the particular flag he was carrying. We were initially told that we couldn't come into the store because of the flag. When I asked why, the staff member just said that they didn't want to cause a scene. It was only when I asked for some justification that he said they'd had issues with their staff being intimidated. Mr. Hawkins said it was good to know he was welcome back, but it was still not clear to him what the issue was. He was prepared to give the supermarket the benefit of the doubt and accept the incident had been handled clumsily. Well, here's the thing, right? He's not exactly trying to think from their perspective, and this is the issue with a lot of people who kick up a hiss and a roar, at retail staff and so forth, and they make decisions like this. I mean, what are the possible reasons why they would think it would cause a scene? What are the possible reasons they could have for wanting to have the flag not be brandished around the store? Well, for me, it's they, one, don't want to cause a scene because all the time, particularly on social media, we see people who, just because they are identified as being either an Israeli supporter or a Palestinian supporter, it causes a ruckus, it causes drama, and it just isn't what you want inside your store because it drives people away. And that can extend to staff members being targeted if they take issue with it, or if they perhaps a supporter of a particular group and so forth. Shadowban says, naughty supermarket, it's not the price of food you should be mad at or the push of the impossible meat, but the flag restrictions. Absolutely. They may actually, I would be all in support of them doubling the price of everything just so that we can have more security to prevent such incidents with flags. The flags are the biggest problem. Marching for peace in Palestine in Dunedin's Octagon has been taking place every Saturday since the start of the war in October last year. Yes, we're aware it's been going on and on and on for 11 months, all because a terrorist group decided that they would go and commit an atrocity and essentially sacrifice tens of thousands of their own people in the retaliation. And they want peace, demanding that Israel be the instigator or the West be the instigator of that peace. Meanwhile, the people that are actually responsible for it all could not care less for the peace. They don't want peace. It's a nonsensical approach. Say what you want about Israel, say what you want about Zionism, anything, but those marching down the street don't actually give a shit about, one, globalists. They don't think globalists are an issue at all. But their biggest issue was the idea that Zionism's going to wipe out all Palestinians. It's not a war, it's an Israeli special operation. I 100% concur. It's an Israeli special operation every day of the week. Just as October 7th was, an act of peaceful resistance. So, it was completely justified. The The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says since the war broke out, more than 41,000. So here's the thing, right? In May, the estimated number was closing in on about 40,000. It's now September, and it's still around 40,000. So this whole this whole drive from Israel to wipe them all out's kind of stalled, hasn't it? So that's fascinating. Very much has stalled. About 1,200 Israelis have been killed and 5,400 injured as well. Is that 1,200 since October 7th? You'd have to think so, wouldn't you? Because it wouldn't be including, because there's been a lot of deaths since. Obviously not quite to the same level, because it's all IDF typically going in. The UN estimates 1.9 billion people have been displaced in Gaza and about 70,000 homes have been destroyed. Yep. If only the Egyptians wanted to let any of them in, or Jordan for that matter. But hey, that doesn't appear to be on the bingo card for them. But hey, what are you gonna do? Okay. I'll quickly chuck some music back on and find us another article to go over. If you do have anything to add on that story, feel free to leave it in the comments.
Attacking people with a tone. We just want to save this world, so prepare yourselves for us. Try to take me down. Try to lift me up, but stop the time crashing through my mind. Let's try to get up beyond. You say you like me better the way, and I swear that I try, but I was so blind. They say it works it if you let them stay, so I count my ties. This is my good enough, saying
Honestly, Shadowband, I have no idea what's going on there, if I'm honest. So, yeah, I'm sure we'll get a bit, I don't know, a clearer idea on updates as it happens, or maybe not. It's hard to really know, if I'm honest. The most recent article about it appears to be 13th of June, so it's almost like they've just... We'll ignore that. Alrighty then, I'll stick to my strong points. Sticking to what's always strong is never a bad idea. Prime Minister Christopher Luxon says the Treaty Principles Bill is not the number one issue for New Zealanders. Not the number one issue. Based on what polling, sir? What I would say is, even if it's not the number one issue, it should be one of the number one issues, if not the number one issue. The idea that treating everyone equally under the law isn't a huge issue for New Zealanders when the alternative is something very much different, yeah, I would say that's a pretty big deal. Now, Prime Minister Christopher Luxon believes support for Act's Treaty Principles Bill doesn't reflect the views of all New Zealanders, as he again forced to explain National's position on the bill, this time to one of his party members. While on Newstalk ZB this morning, Luxon took a call from Michael, who identified himself as a National Party member, and questioned why Luxon had ruled out supporting Act's bill, claiming there was huge support for Act leader David Seymour's effort to redefine the treaty principles. And he's not wrong. The polling supports the idea that over 60%, I think it's about 66% of National Party members support, or at least people who said they would vote for the National Party, who support the bill. Before Luxon answered, ZB host Kerry Woodham challenged Michael on the level of support for the bill, acknowledging supporters might be vocal but not huge in number. Well, Kerry's obviously not looked at the polling either, and I understand it's only one poll, but it's still a poll. It's still so high in the level of support that is any other pollster really going to have a dramatically different take? Maybe it's as low as 50% in the National Party. Whip-de-doo. But the fact that the National Party have consistently maintained the position that they will not support it for like a year, and yet we're at a position where it seems that most people who support the National Party still support it, shows that National aren't necessarily in touch with their constituents. And I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me, because they are such a large party. They are very much they don't really find themselves grounded in the in the views of the average New Zealander. At least in my experience, mingling with the odd person here and there from the party. But, they often are at odds with their own membership. I know someone who is very much close with, Erica Stanford. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Erica Stanford isn't at odds with her when it comes to what the party should be prioritising. David, Māori violence is a daily occurrence for fellow Māori. Yeah, suppose it is. I'm going to quickly, before I get back into it, I'm going to quickly go over to TikTok. Someone with the most fascinating name, who we're going to call Duck, says, "Hey Eric, I enjoy your opinions." I don't think he's in the chat anymore, but that's okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Duck. And David Reynolds says, "You ain't wrong. Neither of you are wrong. You're both right bang on the money." Luxon, reiterating National's intention to vote against the bill after it finished in select committee, argued most New Zealanders wanted the government to focus on addressing the high cost of living and to improve health and education services. He restated his views the bill was incredibly divisive and unhelpful. Seymour has maintained Luxon could change his mind and support the bill amid a public debate, something Luxon has rubbished. Now, let's just remind ourselves, so this is our Prime Minister saying, this bill is incredibly divisive and unhelpful. On what basis is it divisive? The fact that the racial separatists oppose it. Those who cozy up to the racial separatists oppose it. Yet he also claims it's unhelpful. In what way is preventing the racial separatists from getting their way unhelpful? Last I checked, that's the most helpful thing you can do, is to implement a policy or provide people the ability to vote in favour of really pushing the threat of racial separatism right down into the gutter. Because that is really what this is about here. We either have this referendum in 2026 and we give ourselves the opportunity to say, no, we do not want to grant a whole ethnic group different rights and duties simply because they are here first. We don't want that. We want everyone to be treated the same under the law, and we want the law to reflect that. We need the treaty to reflect that, because that was its purpose in the first place. We don't want to allow these unelected academics, ideologues, activist judges, and be them in the actual courts or the tribunal. We don't want them to be dictating the future of the country, because that means they're dictating to the legislature, to the executive. Last I checked, that's not exactly what you wanted when it comes to the separation of powers. Each place has their role. Them dictating the understanding of a constitutional arrangement is not one of them. That really is something that we cannot tolerate. So what it says to me is Luxon is a puppet for those who want him to do whatever the hell he's told. He will maintain the position that it's incredibly divisive and unhelpful, no matter how ridiculous that position is. The divisive ones, the violent ones, the ones who are a risk to the social cohesion, are all the separatists, are all the nutters that oppose it. And they oppose it because, well, let's be real here, they gain to benefit from opposing it. David Reynolds, who's got dirt on Luxon, firstly, from Shadowban. Yeah, great question. Who does have dirt on Luxon? David Reynolds says, a small but loud percent of Māori are sucking off the teat of Kiwi taxes, and their racial turmoil distracts us from taking them to task. I mean, the whole narrative of, oh, poor me, I'm oppressed, I'm Māori, so I get, special privileges, is crazy. And people will sit there and deny it all the time, and then I'll just go onto TikTok, and then I'll just go onto TikTok, and then everyone in my comment section that opposes me will pretty much affirm my point whilst denying my point at the same time. And Duck back on TikTok says, "Lol, I'm a woman, but pretty much agree with all your views." Oh, well, that's lovely. What a name again. What a name. But yeah. So honestly, I'm not. ACT is far too socially liberal for me. But I'll take this prick as Prime Minister over this prick any day of the week. Honestly. And that's coming from me, who 14 months ago was a National Party member. Oh boy, how they've just pissed me off. So Shadowban says, David, I disbelieve this theory. Māori genes can be traced back to the UK. Can they really? Interesting. Māori doesn't exist. We are New Zealanders. Well, I mean, nationality and ethnicity are different things, but yeah, each to their own. If the treaty was a partnership, then why did the real Māori of 1840 not turn up at Parliament to take their half of the country? To be fair, I don't think we had an actual Parliament in 1840, though, did we? But yeah, point made, point understood. Woodham then pushed Luxon to Seymour's Luxon on Seymour's comment, saying the ACT leader was acting like a brat in her view. Luxon disagreed and said the bill was the number one issue for ACT supporters, but it was not a position shared by most New Zealanders, he believed. As a party, they have a constituency and people who think this is a very big issue. It's the number one issue for them. The reality is that's not the reality for New Zealanders. Luxon claimed the matter had not prompted him to encourage Seymour to tone down his language, saying there were a lot of conversations behind the scenes with all the parties, but they were done in a calm and coherent way. In October, a taxpayers' union Courier poll found 60% of the 926 respondents supported the bill, with 18% opposing the idea and the remaining 22% saying they were unsure. However, that poll asked respondents based on the bill's principles as they were proposed then. Cabinet this week agreed on the 3 principles to be included in the treaty principles, which revealed a change to Seymour's originally proposed second principle. And I will note something about this. Given the change, one would argue it would only provide the opportunity for more support, at least certainly from the left-wing parties. Whether or not some people on the right might be a little bit more hesitant to support it because they don't quite understand what it entails, I could understand that. But the changes are not dramatic. The changes are not really going to have any real impact, but it's just reworded to appease the vocal minority who want to rubbish the idea. So yeah, that's really not going to make any difference in the grand scheme of things. I can only see that 60% number going up, and of course that the unsure number going down. Ministry of Justice now includes recognitions of the rights of Hapu and Iwi when the treaty was signed, and states those rights differed from those afforded to others only when they are specified in legislation, treaty settlements, or other agreement with the Crown. And this is the thing some people might have an issue with. Only when they are specified. So they can have different rights afforded those afforded to others when they are specified in legislation, treaty settlements, or other agreements with the Crown. I suspect, in practice, at least certainly under a government involving Act and the likes of New Zealand First, that this would mean the only examples of this would be treaty settlements and so forth that are already settled, right? And legislation passed as a result of other agreements or things that have happened in the last few decades, where it's not really impinging generally on how we're all treated. Now, do I think that there is a wiggle room here for the likes of Te Pāti Māori or the Greens or Labour to still try and circumvent that? Yes, but then you would have to argue, does it then breach one of the other 2 articles mentioned or other principles mentioned in ACT's policy? That's where you have to weigh up. And so it's a bit of a weighing game, but they have to, of course, they have to make sure that what they are doing is consistent with what the treaty actually says. That's the difficulty of it. And unless they're wording it accurately, it's going to be harder to demand support for it. And so that's why they've had to make this kind of compromise where technically there is a loophole, but that loophole is more or less kind of covered off by the other principles. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes down, but I personally prefer it to what they previously proposed. Shadowban says, to all my fellow people in chat, just start claiming you're Māori now. Tell them to prove you ain't instead of the other way around. Exactly. Tell them to prove, and they'll just say, oh, well, my cousin from that part of the world or country never heard of you, so you can't be Māori. That's what they say to me. Oh, I know, I got a cousin in Te Whānau Apanui. Oh, you're not from there. I'm like, okay, good for you. Good for you. That's about all you can say. Ministry of Justice officials warned the bill would lead to the existing treaty principles being replaced with new, significantly narrower principles. I wouldn't argue that they're significantly narrower at all, just a bit more specific and appropriate, accurate. The regulatory impact statement issued alongside Seymour's statement considered the status quo as it functions now and defining the principles and legislation as Seymour has proposed. Although the bill could have some value, officials believe the status quo is more beneficial. How is the status quo more beneficial when you have an entire separatist movement over there demanding their political independence, that they want their entire own parliament, where they have their own monarch acting as essentially a mockery of our own constitutional monarchy? Like seriously. Officials are completely out of touch with reality, or just pretend that none of it's happening. Under this option, the courts and the Waitangi Tribunal would continue to articulate the meaning of the treaty principles in line with the existing legislation and practice. This option would uphold treaty obligations to the same extent as they are now. Yeah, no. Anything that allows the Waitangi Tribunal to articulate anything with respect to the treaty principles, get the right out of there. The treaty principles don't exist, but if we're going to have them, they should not be dictated to by some unelected people. Okay. The analysis was finalised in late August when the final content of the principles had yet to be determined, but said the policy proposal was inconsistent with the treaty. This morning, lobby group Hobson's Pledge, led by former National and ACT Party leader Don Brash, railed against the change to the second principle, opposing what it believed was Cabinet agreeing to 2 levels of rights. And yeah, this is what I mean. There is room here for those of us on the right to oppose the change. But I think what Hobson's Pledge needs to understand is that they still need to ensure that the second principle they're proposing reflects what the actual treaty states. And this is a more accurate representation of that, the most accurate representation of that they could possibly come up with. All they've really stated is that they have the protections and so forth that are outlined in Article 2 protected again. So they're just doubling down on the protections, and that essentially just means that the already decided treaty settlements and so forth kind of have to remain there, and other forms of agreements kind of have to remain there. It's not really saying, hey, look, we're opening the door to just create 2 levels of rights based on ethnicity willy-nilly. It's far more narrow than that, and it's certainly more complex than just it allows 2 levels of rights. Whilst it says that technically, in theory, that can be the case, it's not like it's established there for the purpose of doing that, but rather plugging that hole, ensuring that it's less likely to happen, while still managing to get the support. And again, I have to reiterate, I do not support acknowledging principles at all. But even if we didn't acknowledge the existence of principles, all of a sudden would be in a position where the tribunal or others, they'll try and interpret the treaty any way they want to get what they want. They'll just say, this is what it means. So how do we come to a finalised understanding of what it means when the academics don't care what the government think? This group over here, this group over here, this group over here, they all share different views of what it means. Irrespective of which one's actually accurate, it doesn't matter. There's just to be that constant conflict. So if you can entrench into law by way of referendum what we understand this to mean, that is the best way forward. So you could delete the treaty principles as well, but then you have to then replace that option with with an understood and finalized meaning of it all. That would essentially do the exact same thing anyway. So you may as well just get behind this at this point. So yeah. With that being said, Hobson's pledge have a point. I think it's a bit more complicated. In an email, supporters were urged to get as many submissions on the bill as possible that oppose the current wording of the second principle. It encouraged supporters to make donations to assist with the group's desire to create a website to facilitate submissions and run social media campaigns. So yes, there is that. But over to TikTok really quickly. Tane Gurnick says, "Who asked?" I asked Tane. I asked myself, and I answered. We'll call you Richard. Richard Love says the treaty is hard to decipher into modern day democracy. The first and third articles are very simple, but yeah, the second one's complicated in terms of the modern day. Given that it wasn't really, it's not really something that translates into the modern day. In terms of in practice. Dwift one says, "Is the government correct on this?" Well, the government's made up of three parties, so you can't really say they're correct if they're all at odds with each other. One party doesn't support the Principles Bill because they think it's divisive and not needed. One party does support the Principles Bill because they are the ones that proposed it, and another party doesn't support the Principles Bill because they don't think principles exist at all. And then over on the other side of the aisle, in the opposition, you've got one party who thinks the actual treaty principles that they believe exist give them all different rights and duties under law and mean that they have the right to have their own rights, laws, all of that sort of stuff, that they can establish their own parliament, that they are inherently entitled to more in this land than anyone else. You got another party who just thinks that everything's about, all of it's about decolonization, so we can't oppose it at all. I mean, we have to oppose it. We can't support this at all. And then, of course, you got Labour, who are kind of just like, we oppose it because the government have proposed it, and we don't think, we're the ones responsible for the principles in the first place, so we kind of have to support the principles. We don't want them changed. And it fits our progressive agenda to support this radical shift in our nation. And quickly back over to the main chat. Shadowban says, "I'm an anti-war anarchist. I still struggle to understand how I'm right-wing in the modern politics, but okay." Anti-war anarchist, that's interesting. And you also said they don't. Yeah, see, I'm not someone who's inherently anti-war. I prefer not to have war, but I understand the need for it in certain instances. Like I'm anti pointless war, or war that doesn't achieve anything or is purely there for gaining financially and shit like that. I'm against proxy wars. When you've got two superpowers doing a dick measuring contest and stuff like that, or you're trying to install a government that supports your agenda. I'm all against that sort of stuff. But I mean, there are certainly instances where war is more than necessary, and that's fine by me. So yeah, one could argue I'm a situationalist, whatever that is. But in the meantime, I'll allow chat to kind of dictate the pace of things. That I didn't want to do something too long, so I'll just kind of kick back for a minute or two, and figure out what to do next. But how much we got? We got 49 viewers. That's all right for a Tuesday afternoon. Not doing anything particularly interesting. A quick reminder again. I've got all my links at a new place called link.bio/Eric McQuarrie. Except the link doesn't have an I on it, so it's just lnk.bio/Eric McQuarrie. You can find all my links there, including my latest video on YouTube, and there'll be more to come as I mess around with that So feel free to go have a look. How's the chat going? So Shadowban says, what side dictated the Treaty of Waitangi again? Did the Māori have the upper hand? My memory seems foggy on this. And of course, I mean Financial Hitman Wars. Good book to read, by the way, Eric. So what side dictated the Treaty of Waitangi? Well, I mean, I'm not really sure if we can call it a dictation of the Treaty of Waitangi, but the British certainly created it. They're the ones that wrote it. So they drafted it into English, and then they translated that into an official Māori text. From there, they presented the official Māori text to the chiefs of the Confederation and others. Then they took a day, decided to start signing, and after they started signing, they very quickly wrote up a official English text as well. But that mainly remained kind of in the more more Auckland region when it came to actually signing. So it didn't really travel too far, the official English text, or at least it didn't get signed by many people outside of that region, because they just signed the Māori text primarily, which is all that was needed. Confessions of a Economic Hitman is the name of the book. Fascinating. I'll try and remember that. If I ever have the patience to sit down and actually read a book, which I spend money on books. I love books, but I just fail to sit down and actually read them. With the half of Māori who were on our side, it wasn't just white versus Māori, but we forget this fact. Well, yes, that's exactly right. You don't have British people able to translate something into Māori unless they've had the help of Māori to, one, learn the language, and two, get some rough guidance on what is wanted by the parties there. If you just come up with something random that's never been discussed before and present it to them, and it's just come out of nowhere, you're not likely to get the amount of support you do, clearly. And it's all something that's it had been going on for well over a decade at this point, the conversations. I mean, we'd already had Māori go over to Britain. They had He Whakaputunga and trying to establish something a little bit more akin to statehood, and some form of governance structure, at least in certain parts of the country. But of course, it was very complicated. You had immigration, you had the threats of other superpowers, really, that are kind of lurking about, or at least the influence of other superpowers, other colonizers, so to speak. And trying to make that work and try and create a society out of that was always going to be complex without something set in stone and formalized. And so this was the logical step forward, and they took it. But yes. Why have I got the... That's weird. Why is that bar there? How bizarre. Give me a moment, folks. There we go. That fixes that bar issue. I'm not even sure why that was there, if I'm completely honest with you. So, whatever's. What I'll quickly do is I think we'll do one more article. I'll just chuck tunes back on for a minute or two. Do another article. If you've got any suggestions on that, do let me know, and I'll try and focus it on that region, on that kind of rough area. But yes, in the meantime, I'll quickly chuck some music back on, and then we'll have another article, answer a couple more chat responses, or reply to a few more chat responses as they come in, and then that'll about do me. I just wanted to see how this stuff is all going. Just a moment, people.
respect you, thought I was enough. Yeah, it feels like half a century ago. Guess you keep coming back after telling me off without even feeling sorry between good. We getting crazy in a different role. She loves the fact that I just let her know.
Hey JT, welcome to the stream, JT. We are coming towards the end. I'm doing a bit of a shorter one today, but I've still got an article in a bit. Also got a little bit of a satire piece from the Babylon Bee. That'll just mix things up a little bit. But for now, I'll quickly turn the music off and I'll get into the. Well, firstly, I didn't get into the Babylon Bee because who doesn't like a good bit of the bee? Just a moment, we will be good to go. In there we are. So yes, Kamala safe and in a stable condition after an attempted interview. As we know, she struggles with those, not unless she's got a whole script out in front of her and it's done by ABC and she went to college with them or whatever. In Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Americans across the country breathed a sigh of relief this morning following breaking news that Vice President Kamala Harris had survived an attempted interview. The incident took place late yesterday afternoon during a campaign stop in Pennsylvania when a rogue reporter reportedly approached the vice president and fired off several questions before being tackled to the ground and subdued by Secret Service agents. Harris was quickly evacuated from the area and taken to a secure location. Thankfully, Vice President Harris is safe and in stable condition, a campaign spokesperson said. We all feared the worst when the crazed person emerged from the crowd and attempted to interview the sitting US Vice President right there in broad daylight. Someone must be looking out for her, though, because she avoided suffering any damage in the incident. The FBI arrived at the scene shortly thereafter and discovered that the would-be interviewer was in possession of several notepads, pens, a cell phone, and a camera authorities believed was intended to capture the event for a live stream or video. Isn't that sick? And a campaign insider. Said a campaign insider. This nutjob had this all planned out. It was coming out here for the specific purpose of interviewing Kamala Harris, and he was trying to record himself doing it. This is the type of America we can expect under Donald Trump. At publishing time, the Secret Service had advised the Harris campaign that it would be best for the vice president to avoid all public appearances from now through Election Day. Isn't that lovely? And it's so true. It really is catastrophic. Honestly, unless it's pre-planned out, she's got a script, she is utterly useless. Utterly useless. But what are you going to do? JT says her policy when interviewed is something along the lines of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air theme song. It consists of, I got a policy on how to tackle the border. It consists of wild cackling. That's about it. Border? What border? More or less. So yeah. But I think we'll finish up with Chris Hipkins set to head over to the UK for a bit. But very quickly, before we do that, I'll go back to my TikTok chat and just back on to the previous topic of the treaty principles for a second. Drift1 says, I agree with Luxon. The treaty principles bill shouldn't be our priority at the moment. I couldn't disagree more, given that it's one of the most important issues facing us in our lifetime, really. I agree it needs to happen at some stage, but this really isn't the time. Well, that's nonsensical. If you think it does need to happen at some stage and now is not the right time, then no time will ever be the right time, because this is really the only chance we have until it's a point of no return. James Hill III says, agree, the cost of living, the massive exodus of essential workers and decline of services, though, still seeing water seep out of the ground all over the show here in Wellington. I think, yes, those are very important issues, but just as the Treaty Principles Bill remains an issue just as important as the rest of them. Quickly back to the main chat. Eric, honestly, Eric. Yeah, when someone pointed out that my name in Dutch translated to English means honestly, it's crazy. It's like, well, maybe that's why I always do my darndest to be an honest guy. I wanted to say honest devil, but no. Let's keep negative words away. But yes, fortunately today, TikTok hasn't shadow banned me for unauthentic content because it isn't unauthentic. It's very much original, so that's good to see. That is very good to see. How many have we got going in the stream right now? 54. Very nice. Cannot complain there. But on to the final article of the day, people. Chris Hipkins to head to the United Kingdom and will discuss Labour's direction with its new government. Now, what I think the most appropriate title for this would have been is Chris Hipkins set, right, to head to the United Arab Emirates, Part 2, Junior, to discuss the new Labour government's direction, right? And if you want to call it new Labour government or new lucked into power government or no one actually likes you government or government that's dramatically going to diminish the value and quality of life in that country, you could come up with a range of different things to say about what the UK is about to experience. They thought the Conservatives were bad because obviously those Conservatives are, one could argue, a disgrace. Oh, shut up, Justin. And yes, I am name dropping you. They're not your name. Hurry up and go to Scotland, you dick. Yeah. On topic, UK. But yeah, so the UK, he's gone over to the UK and they're going to discuss things. Now, the issue is Chris Hipkins doesn't have any record to go off, right? He's absolutely useless. He's achieved absolutely nothing. So how is the Labour government over there going to benefit from his visit? Well, they're not, unless their plan is to dramatically destroy their country. In which case he is In which case he is the perfect man for the job. They may just give him a position in their ministry, just pretend he's British and happy days. They've got plenty of gingers over there, so that'll work. Expose my name. Yes, expose your name. It was just natural. I see your name. That's just what comes to mind. I'm not going to call you Clap. You'll be right, lad. So yeah, he's perfect man for the job. Just give him actually the role of prime minister over there. He won't do any worse than Starmer's going to do. But yes, it improves the opportunity for Hipkins to discuss the party's direction with other policymakers as Labour considers its platform for the next election. Why are they already considering the platform for the next election? That is years away. Absolutely years away. Well, yes, JT says the simple step of a courageous individual is not to take part in the lie. One word of truth outweighs the world. Certainly. That's not too unlike national leader and now Prime Minister Christopher Luxon heading overseas in his first year as leader of the opposition party, or to hear about policy ideas. So it's about his platform rather than Starmer's. That makes sense. Although his policy platform's not going to be anything anyone wants, so it doesn't really matter. And Starmer didn't win because of their policy platform, so why on earth is he going to gain anything of value from them anyway? If we had first past the post, maybe Hipkins could luck into a win next time around, but we don't have first past the post, so that ain't happening. Hipkins, whose trip will be paid for by the taxpayer-funded Leaders Fund, will attend the UK Labour Party's annual conference in Liverpool. While there, he will take part in panel discussions and speaking events. The UK Labour Conference presents a great opportunity to meet with the British counterparts while also attending some of the hundreds of events and discussions that take place on the sidelines of the conference, and no doubt a tableful of sausage rolls. He will also meet with the members of the think tanks, economists and writers in Liverpool and London. He will return to New Zealand on October 1st. As the New Zealand Labour Party undertakes its policy-making process, this the perfect time to take stock of what is happening internationally and discuss our direction with other policymakers. And speaking at a press conference later, Hipkins said he was interested in AI policy. Yeah, well, AI policy is kind of a must. You kind of have to take a stance on that. What the policy is remains to be seen, and whether or not it's something that anyone should be supportive of is a different question altogether. Very quickly back at the chat, Alexander, I'm not even going to try and pronounce that, mate. The sausage rolls will be cold, and the potato salad is in abundance, for sure. Now, what I would be thinking about is whether or not he adopts any policies related to immigration. Although I don't feel like, I mean, what is the UK Labour Party's stance on immigration? I mean, we know that the Conservatives were useless when it came to preventing mass immigration. I don't think Labour over there is particularly any better. So, at least we have a moat around our country. At least we have a massive arse ocean. That is something the new government over there are quite focused on, and there is a lot of discussion around that. We have some common interests with the new government over there around renewable energy and sustainable objectives. Then the broader debate around the economy. New Zealand and the UK, I think, similarly face this investment versus austerity political debate. The issue is, I think, with the whole investment versus austerity political debate is that that's a relatively disingenuous way to put it. The only reason the national government's having to resort to austerity is because we don't have the money to invest, right? The only way that we're able to invest as much as we did under Labour, and invest very poorly, mind you, is because they spent a shit ton of money by borrowing and so forth. They didn't invest that money wisely. They didn't increase the amount of money that they were bringing in sufficiently to warrant or justify that, because a lot of the money was there to bail us out and keep us kind of at a plateau level. I mean, at the end of the day, we ended up in recession. We had more, we had more quarters in a with a reduction in GDP, or at least we had more quarters going downwards than we did going upwards in the last few years. Why? Sorry, people. My brain's not working. I know what the terms are, but whatever. It's not happening to me today. Back to the chat. The cats, dogs eating was an awesome psyop to make the Liberal women rethink their stance. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we go back to what I was saying. We don't have the means of just blind investment. We're still investing in areas where we need to invest, and doing so at lesser rates, or not investing as much as we'd like in health or education, this and that. But we are investing while still technically relying on some levels of austerity. We are cutting costs where necessary. We are not investing where not needed, or where we can get away with not investing at the present time. When it comes to this sort of stuff, you can't really get away with not investing, but sometimes you're forced to. And that's what the current government faces. They're forced not to invest in certain things. And so when that happens, you then are kind of required to ensure that the average New Zealander has more in their back pocket so that they can make up the difference in certain areas. Or so that, at the very least, they don't feel completely miserable. That's the situation we face. And so calling it a austerity versus investment thing, it's just disingenuous. The British Labour government, which took power in July, has had a turbulent start to its term, having to respond to anti-immigration riots. It has also faced backlash for its decision to cut winter energy payments, which Hipkins said he was aware was a controversial issue for them. Hey, and to be fair, winter energy payments do make a difference even here. They do make a difference even here. Like you don't think you'll notice the extra 15, $20, but you do. You notice it. He said the relationship between New Zealand and the United Kingdom was very important and highlighted the free trade agreement between the two countries that came into force when Hipkins was Prime Minister. It will be an opportunity to follow up with the new government to make sure that we continue momentum on that. Under Parliament Speaker's directions, the Leader of the Opposition can have the costs of the international travel and accommodation services funded up to a maximum of $150,000 a term. Hipkins said he was attempting to keep costs down and would stay in the spare room of a friend in London. No doubt a young global leader. Or I'm joking, but maybe. Maybe. You never actually know. JT also says, is a class-based society even avoidable? With mass immigration, the disparity can only grow due to incompetence. A class-based society, in my opinion, is never unavoidable. Or is never avoidable. You're always going to get it to some level. There is always different types of class, whether or not it's even a financially differentiated class. Let's say everyone got paid exactly the same no matter what they did in society. You would always have people that play different roles in that society, and to an extent, you can regard that as classes of people. So, I mean, I would probably look at let's look at a book or a movie like Divergent, for example. They had different classes of people based on what their aptitude was. So some people had a higher aptitude for, being combat trained and ready. And so that was their class in society. Other people had, they were erudite, right? And so they had an aptitude for intelligence, being the researchers, the scientists, and so forth. That was a different class. They all kind of played different roles. They were viewed in different ways. And those did come with different perks ultimately. They had drawbacks and all of that sort of stuff. And so it creates the same differences between economic class, where there's drawbacks and benefits. So I don't really think it's avoidable. And at the end of the day, we're not really going to find ourselves in a situation where everyone can live harmoniously on the same amount of money. There's always going to be, if we are in a position where everyone's getting the, a universal basic income, or a standardized income, no matter what you do, there is always going to be people that, that push the envelope and try and obtain to a certain degree of power or influence that gives them an inherent, class advantage or advantage or more power just generally. I don't think it's just in human nature to reach for that. So yeah, the idea that you can have a classless society is just it doesn't make sense to me. In 2022, Luxon visited London to discuss policy initiatives. A number of meetings with ministers were scrapped. However, due to mass resignation and protest of then British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, the Conservatives have a lot of issues, but they're far more to the right than old Luxon. So I don't know why he even wasted his time with that. But yes, quickly looking back at the chat, JT says, it's hard to insist incompetence on migrants unless you personally experience it in the various work sectors with labour shortage. Yeah, I've got a friend of mine, he works in a place with quite a few migrants. Depending on where specifically they've come from, some are really incompetent, others are pretty decent, they do a fair job. A lot of it's probably culture based. A lot of it's what the power dynamic of the organisation, business you're working for is. Whether or not someone who's also a migrant runs that can kind of change how they behave or how much effort they put in, and so forth. Quickly looking back at the chat on TikTok, Duck says it's real and up-to-date content, enjoying the reality. Thank you very much. If you are still in the chat, I'm not sure. And of course, Rachel Briscoe is in the over on TikTok, number one viewer, also a TikTok subscriber. So thank you very much, Rachel, for that. I will probably move to a TikTok only kind of separate live stream model in the future, at least for the time being. Because I don't know, I prefer to make a more kind of unique experience for TikTok that can be more managed. So there's that for the future. So yes, that's all very well and good. And if people do want to become either TikTok members, YouTube members, that is available. The TikTok is subscription, the YouTube is member. It's available to you. It's a little bit of money a month if you wanted to. It's whatever. YouTube, it's mainly just getting early access to videos, and you get kind of a little bit of a different icon when you comment and so forth. But that's about it. It's nothing special. If anything, all it really does is support me, and that helps me improve the quality of these sorts of things, which is why I've also set up a donation link, which just connects up to Stripe, which is easy enough. You don't need Stripe or anything, but anyone that wants to, you're more than welcome to do that. It helps me out, but no pressure. It's whatever. I can afford to do it. It just helps improve things faster. So yeah, that is gonna more or less wrap it up, unless anyone has anything to comment. It is. I'm gonna leave the floor open for a few minutes. I'll put some tunes back on. Leave some stuff in the chat to talk about. But that'll be the final article for the day. We've been going for an hour and a half, so it's still a reasonably lengthy period of time, albeit a good chunk of that was me setting the stream up. So music back on in just a moment.
She loves the fact that I just let her know. We getting crazy in a different role. We getting crazy in a different role. She my dude. It's you and only you.
What you want, but I'm not okay with my brain anymore. I'm not okay with the way that it could. Hardship is fortune, so maybe before, maybe before, maybe before, maybe before. Find the time to celebrate, reason to live my trials. I need to buy myself and cry.
my own hands, gleaming my eyes. Give me the thunder, hear the thunder, cozy thunder, right now. Give me the thunder, hear the thunder, cozy thunder, right now. Give me the Give me the thunder,